one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Just so everyone's aware, the meeting is recorded and on video. We're going to start our meeting out today with a public hearing. And we have actually 3 public hearings today. And I would like to read you the legal notice that was in the newspaper in regard to 2 of them. Notice is hereby given that the Warren County Commissioners will, pursuant to the provisions of the Municipalities Planning Code, hold a public hearing at noon Wednesday, May 24th in the Jackson Courtroom 2, 2nd floor of the Warren County Courthouse to consider, obtain comments, and take action on the following rezoning requests and changes to text of the Warren County zoning ordinance. The first item is rezoning request for Richard and Nancy Holcomb, Pleasant Township, from residential R1 district to R2 district, which includes Warren County parcel WN 732-3882, WN 732-3848, WN 732-3851, WN 732-3855, and lastly, WN 732-3867. Second item is adoption of Ordinance 249, creating Section 313 Wellhead Protection Overlay District. The purpose of this district is to accommodate wellhead protection in select areas served by public water systems. And so I'd like to open up the hearing. Today we have with us the rezoning request from R1 to R2. Mr. and Mrs. Richard Holcomb are present with us today. This involves 5 parcels, as I read. I'd like to turn it over to Michael.
Okay. It was a rezoning request from R1 to R2. Mr. Holcomb has a small building on one of the parcels that he owns that is being converted into a small apartment, if you will,
Okay.
which isn't allowed in R1. So 3 of those 5 parcels are actually owned by Mr. Holcomb. The other 2, we have permission from those owners to include that in the 5 parcel rezoning. All property owners with 300 feet were notified. We've had no questions. The properties were posted on May 10th, and we actually see no issues with the rezoning request. I have a copy of the map if you'd like to see that.
Okay, yes, please.
These 2 and this one are owned by Mr. Holcomb. This is Mr. Bevavino, and this one is owned by the Wesleyan Church. And we have written permission from him. I have verbal permission from them.
Okay, and these other 2 parcels?
Are Mr. Holcomb's,
Okay.
and this is the building in question.
Okay. This is right on
Pleasant Drive. Yep. This is
What's this?
Trimcliffe. This is a building across the street. That's an existing duplex that was grandfathered.
Oh,
That's been
okay.
there since the 50s.
Okay. And is that in an R1?
Yes.
Okay.
But this one existed prior to zoning ordinance being
Okay.
created in the 60s.
Understood. All right. Thank you very much, Michael.
You're welcome.
Is there anybody here present today that would like to speak on behalf of this rezoning? Anyone in objection? Anyone in favor? If there's nothing else to be heard, we will consider this in the meeting portion of our meeting.
We have to do the text change to the section.
Yes, we'll move on to the next item of the ordinance change, and that would be the text change to section 313 of ordinance 249 regarding wellhead protection overlay district, creating a new section for the North Warren Municipal Water Authority to protect water supplies. And again, I would open this up to Michael for explanation.
I'm actually going to defer that to Dan.
Okay.
If you don't mind, Commissioners, I'll come up to the front of the room. That
Sure.
way everyone's not having to
Please do.
turn around. The North
Courtroom Municipal Authority, which provides a public water system to a number of customers in the immediate North Warren area, began a source water protection plan process at the recommendation of the Pennsylvania DEP back in 2016. The DEP did provide funding for the authority to contract with SSM, which is Spot, Stevens, and McCoy, to develop this plan. It involves a number of studies, both on the surface as well as subsurface, a lot of geologic analysis as well, in addition to water flows that serve the two water wells that the municipal authority has at their main office location on the state hospital grounds. The primary reason for this plan, if you don't mind, I'd just like to read just a couple of paragraphs. The authority delivers drinking water to approximately 1,600 people in Warren County, Northwest Pennsylvania. The authority wishes to preserve and improve the safety of its drinking water supply for its customers today and into the future. Although the municipal authority has had no previous problems, it is concerned about the possibility of contamination from various sources throughout the watershed, including agricultural activities, residential development, and roadway spills. In January of 2015, the authority staff applied for assistance from the DEP Source Water Protection Technical Assistance Program to develop a thorough and comprehensive source water protection plan. In 2016, this project was initiated. The objective of this plan is to develop a source water protection plan that delineates the recharge area for the authority's water sources, determines the transport times and pathways of potential contaminants, identifies potential sources of contamination, educates the public on the importance of source water protection, plan for potential pollution events, and complies with DEP's Chapter 109 regulations. So this document was completed early this year. Back in November of 2016, as a mechanism to help implement the plan, the authority approached the county about the creation of an overlay zone. I do have maps of the proposed area. If there's anyone who wants to see these, I do have a few extra copies. There are three zones delineated on here: Zones 1, Zone 2, and Zone 3. Zone 1 is the immediate area where the wellheads are located on the state hospital grounds, a very small circle that you'll notice on the map that's identified in kind of an orangish color or dark yellow. Zone number 2 is an area that covers a good share of the North Warren residential proper, as well as parts of the state hospital grounds, and a small tract going up Jackson Run Road a short distance. That is known as zone number 2. Zone number 3 extends further on up the Jackson Run area. Part of the amendment process, though, is to develop a text amendment, if you will, and that's what this second document is here. In the text document, it defines those zones as well as delineates certain types of uses that would be either controlled through special exception purposes by the zoning hearing board or uses that would be prohibited as a potential threat to the subsurface water within zones 1 and 2. The primary focus of the authority was to look at both zones 1 and 2. Zone 3 does have one potential use that is prohibited altogether, and that's a landfill. As you know, the county used to have a landfill in Grunderville. That was closed down. The likelihood of another landfill materializing in the county is probably slim to none. But that's the only controlled or restricted use within Zone 3. There are a few uses in Zone 2 that are already currently controlled by the zoning hearing board. In other words, the zoning officer does not have the authority to act on the permit because it has a little greater impact. So it has been deferred onto the zoning hearing board. who has the authority to attach reasonable conditions that they feel necessary. So there are a few uses noted there, and you'll see in the last 2 pages of the document, it outlines or identifies the different uses that are controlled. So back to the November Planning Commission meeting. The authority did meet with the Planning Commission along with the township supervisors. The Planning Commission felt that because the supervisors play a role in determining the boundaries, which were actually initially determined by SSM based on their studies, that they wanted to make sure that there was agreement between both the authority and the township supervisors as to the delineated zones 1, 2, and 3. So over the course of the next several months, both the authority and the township supervisors worked together to massage this document here, which was provided to us by SSM as a model and a starting point. In May, at the Planning Commission's May 2nd meeting, the draft was presented by both the authority and the township supervisors to the County Planning Commission, and upon review of that document, the Commission recommended that the County Commissioners consider it for adoption. This would be treated as a transparent overlay. Uses that are currently allowed or zoning districts that are currently in place would continue to be there. It's just the additional controls over this small area you see noted as zones 1 and 2. Those uses identified on the last 2 pages of the document would be applicable to controlled or additional restrictions for uses within those 2 zones. So that's pretty much an overview of the progress of this proposal. You notice that the authority and the township supervisors are here at this public meeting. I'll turn it back over to the commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dan. And we do have the Conowingo supervisors here. Do I see any? Oh, okay. And Conowingo Township Municipal Authority. Okay. I'll let the supervisor go first. Do you have anything to add?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Municipal Authority, anything to add? No? All right. So you're saying that this did go to the Planning Commission, and with their approval, this was sent to us?
Yes, the recommendation was for the commissioners to consider adopting that. Yes.
Okay. I'd like to open it up to any other questions or concerns from the audience. Anyone else have something they'd like to add? Mr. Stewart?
I'd like to speak in opposition to it. Surely you're not opposed to clean water, and I appreciate that it's not a Zone 3 restriction, that you've limited to Zone 1 and 2. However, I want to start from the general and work to the specific. In general, we start with the proposition that we don't have a problem that we've experienced. We're worried about a future potential problem. And like everything else that we do in public office, we have to balance all the considerations that are out there. And I want to ask you to consider to balance a problem that is very real, that's very much here today, and very much going to get worse, I think, well before we're going to see problems with water supply in Warren County. And that problem is that we're dying on the vine in the county. Our population used to be over 47,000 people. We're down greater than 20% from that number. We're an aging population, and I've run a number of businesses in the county, and I will tell you I get tired of running businesses, fighting all the regulations that there are to fight. I spent half my life in Harrisburg fighting regulations, or in DC fighting new regulations there. They just get thicker and thicker every year. And that's no condemnation of the good purposes that are in mind with the folks on the authority and the folks who are supervisors, because I know that they're well intentioned. But it becomes a question of what is the balance point where you just close down possibilities that you also need to keep your county in operation. So I'm the father of 4 children who, if it weren't for the business that I operated, they wouldn't really have possibilities to stay here, and we hear that story told time and time again. So I'm on the school board, and on the school board, we're faced with the biggest decision of the year: do we raise taxes? Same decision you face, and I know we all go through the same thing, and that is we look at every possibility before we raise those taxes. And have you looked at every possibility here, and how does that balance shake out? And so, with respect to those possibilities, I'd like to move to the specific, if I could. And I'll talk about oil and gas, which would be one of the things restricted here, mostly because I know about oil and gas, having been in that business now for nearly 30 years. And I would say to you that what is the concern with respect to the drilling? I think others here will be better able to talk about how that's already regulated, so I'll steer away from that. I want to talk to you about where my oil and gas wells are in the Allegheny National Forest. If you go look at the 2000 study put together by the Allegheny, they very proudly say from the chair of the forest supervisor that the Allegheny heralds the cleanest water in the state. And you know that our stream quality has risen in the last 30 years in the state, where we've been moving streams into higher and higher orders of quality, many of them all the way to the EQ level. This is in the very watershed where we operate 40,000 wells, and I have several hundred of those. We're proud to say that that quality has increased in the time of the oil and gas operation, not just the maintenance of existing wells, but the drilling of new wells, the very operation that we're concerned of here. And I'll close my remarks with one more specific item about oil. And I know that the fear is that, yes, somebody's going to drill a well here, there's going to be an oil spill, and it's going to migrate its way to these well bores and harm hundreds or thousands of people who draw water from those wells. Again, what is the balance? What's the reality of that happening? So I'll leave with you. May I approach you?
Sure.
I'll leave with you an article on bioremediation. This is an EPA document, and this is the 10-page article put together by those three gentlemen. This gentleman at the top has spent his entire career working at the EPA in Bradford, and I apologize that this did not print very well, and I can certainly email these to you. This is actually an excerpt from a 73-page PowerPoint from the EPA, but this is a picture of a person cultivating the ground where there was an oil spill. And this article and this 73-page document are all about the concept of what happens to oil when it goes to the ground. And the EPA, over its experience in the last 30 years in Bradford cleaning oil spills, has learned that the most effective way to clean those oil spills is to leave it in sight and cultivate it, allow it to aerate, and what happens is that microbes that are naturally in the soil attack that carbon-based product. And the 73-page document is replete with study after study after study after study that they've done, taking scientific samples. So they joke about it. They both use the sniff test and the scientific test. And they find that this oil does not migrate in the least. In fact, it's destroyed in situ by those very microbes. And on the second page of that 2-page document that I've left you is a listing of several of the sites that are in their study. And the numbers that you're seeing on the, not the second page of that one, they wouldn't get to it, the other document. The second page, those numbers that you're seeing are hydrocarbons in place. And you'll see that the numbers go down drastically. They go down over 90% in just the first season, and then they're eradicated by the time it's been there for a season or two. And we're actually running bioremediation experiments now in the Allegheny National Forest as another means of taking care of oil. So my point is oil your most dangerous item that you have to balance? Here's ample scientific study by the EPA right in our backyard that when oil hits the ground, it's going to stay in sight. It's not going to travel the distance of this room, let alone the kind of distances that you're talking about in Zone 2. And it's going to be destroyed in sight. And so I'll leave you with this last thought. If we really want to be safe, and we really want to take away all the dangers, let's just shut down all the traffic on 62 and shut down all the traffic on State Street. And then when there won't be any wrecks where diesel fuel or gasoline can spill from tanks. And of course I'm being ridiculous and sarcastic when I say that, because we need those means of transportation to sustain our human life, and that would be a ridiculous balance, wouldn't it? But I think that we also need business in our community, and we want to strike a reasonable balance for that. And so I would say to you, yet another layer of regulatory burden on people who are struggling to do business in Pennsylvania. It's just really not a reasonable balance. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Anybody else like to speak?
I guess I would. I'd like to speak to...
Could you please identify yourself?
I am David Clark from Youngsville, Pennsylvania. We've actually conducted, and this just goes to the bioremediation. This is stuff that the EPA goes with. We've had training on this as well. So this is a very well-known, and you can bioremediate above the ground, you can bioremediate under the ground. So oil is a natural thing that can be eaten with bacteria. The other thing I'd like to get to is, of course, all of us want to have clean water. And it is your right and to have a special protection as you're doing wellhead program. Where that really came from was in Act 13 that was brought with the unconventional industry to help townships and folks have a say in how they want to protect that. So I guess my question to you folks is we do have multiple layers. And as you said, there was not degradation of these wells during years where regulation was much lower in every activity, industrial activity, residential activity than it is today. So as well-meaning as it is, I do believe what Arthur's saying, and that all of a sudden you're trying to answer to many different masters. And even with your own staffing in the Warren County Planning and Zoning, are these folks going to actually be trained and understand what they're looking at when they come out to oil and gas sites? Or all of a sudden now are we going to have another layer of people that we have to answer to, well-meaning, great people, neighbors and friends, that are not educated, and all of a sudden now we have problems that we didn't need to have because we're already regulated by people that are educated to do so.
Thank you, Dave.
I want to speak also.
Attorney Bauer.
David Bauer. I've sat in your shoes as a county commissioner. I'm an attorney who represents oil and gas producers. I'm an attorney who represents landowners in disputes with oil and gas producers. I'm an attorney who represents municipalities, and I represent an authority right now who has a water supply that provides public drinking water. I myself am an oil and gas producer registered in the state of Pennsylvania that has wells in Warren County. So I cover a lot of territory here in my knowledge base and my experience. And I'm opposed to this ordinance for a lot of different reasons. But primarily, I'll tell you this. This is an area that is highly regulated already. And so you have to ask yourself, what's the compelling reason for the county and you folks, because the buck stops with you folks, to begin regulating in a whole new area that you've never regulated before, oil and gas, when there is an agency, a state agency, with an army, a vast army of regulators, a huge budget, attorneys, people that are doing this already with decades of experience, with regulations that have been tested by case law that they understand very well. And the county has zero experience. And I'm not trying to put anyone down, but you don't have the personnel to do this or the budget to handle this. Why would you do this? What's the compelling reason when we haven't had issues with public water being contaminated in Warren County by oil and gas activities? I don't understand where the compelling issue is here. And I do understand that folks should be concerned about water, and we all are. But from a factual perspective, we haven't had that contamination. And we've had oil and gas activities in Warren County for over 150 years now, and much of that time under far less stringent regulation and oversight than we have now. And it is very highly regulated now. Another concern that I have is this, and this comes out of my experience, is that even now, with the county zoning department, sometimes, and not always, but sometimes the county gets drawn into disputes between neighbors through the county zoning ordinance, where one neighbor doesn't like what another neighbor's doing. Well, the same thing happens now with the DEP through oil and gas regulations, where someone doesn't like the oil well on their property and they call up the DEP. And the DEP guy comes out and he works with the producer and says, well, what do we really have going on here? And sometimes some things really are bad and they have to be fixed. But a lot of times it's just a landowner that really doesn't have a good understanding. And things are smoothed over and they go away. But the DEP person is able to do that because, again, they have training, they have regulations that they've had a lot of experience in dealing with, and there's a system in place for that. The county is starting from scratch. And if you're drawn into those disputes, there's a lot of risk here because you could be pulled into litigation that's very expensive to untangle. And I just don't think that's wise when, again, you have another agency that already has taken this on. And again, you don't have this water quality issue that is there. So, I just really, again, implore you, don't enter into this area. Once you start down this road, you're there. And once you're on the road, it's easy for it to expand and expand. And for the oil and gas producers in this county, we already have enough on our plate to deal with. This ordinance, when you read it carefully, gives the county the right to show up at any time. 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Anyone can walk onto our leases. We already have that with the DEP. Like I said, the cranky neighbor now can call the DEP and the DEP guy will come, but they know how to screen that because of their experience. The county doesn't. So it's something more. It's just more of the hassle factor that we're going to have to deal with. And the way the ordinance works, again, if you read it through very carefully, oil and gas activities that already exist for producers, and I don't have any wells in this area, so it's not like that, but it could come to my area eventually, who knows. The way it works now, you're grandfathered in. You're there by as a non-conforming use. But one violation of anything, so that's up to someone's interpretation. Right now, the DEP could come and say, well, I see what's going on, but I'm not really going to consider that a violation. We'll work to fix that. But a county person could come on, look through the DEP regulations with the landowner looking over his shoulder and say, oh yeah, gotcha, that's a violation. You lose your special exemption now, and now you have to come before the county zoning hearing board and get a special you now have to get a special exception where the county can put conditions on your use that exceed the regulations that the state and federal government impose. So now the county is in the position of being super regulator now. You may say that's not going to happen, and that may not be anyone's intention today as we sit here, but that's the way the ordinance is built. It's the law that you're creating. So I'm saying to you, please don't create a law like that for us when we already have very stringent DEP regulations that are in place to protect all of this already. And the proof is we don't have the drinking water problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Anyone else care to comment?
I probably should. I'm Rusty Van Epps. I work for the North Warren Municipal Authority. Maybe I can explain a little more detail about what our purpose is. It's preventative purpose to protect the water aquifer. I understand the importance of the oil and gas industry. I have family, friends that are in the oil and gas industry. Our focus is Zone 2 only. And I understand the ramifications that
may be going through someone's mind that if we adopt this for Zone 2, then what's to keep it from spreading to the entire county? But we're not asking that. We're asking for Zone 2 only, and that zone was identified by professional hydrogeologists as a capture zone for our wells. Anything that's in the aquifer within that boundary will reach our water wells within a year time. If surface contamination is much easier to deal with than aquifer contamination. And we're not just only talking oil and gas, we're talking a number of industries that would have a potential. And if you contaminate an aquifer, especially the one the size of ours, you can't fix it. You can't decontaminate an aquifer. We have very good water wells, high volume water wells. We serve 1,600 people, probably realistically about 2,000 people. And it's just our concern to try to prevent. We know we haven't had any problems in the county in the past. We don't want to have problems. If we have a problem, then we're forced to find another water source or truck water in from another water supply, something on that order, or acquire it in some manner. And this all came about as recommendations from the DEP and things. If you guys think you're regulated by the DEP, really, we are the ones that are probably more regulated. But anyways, I just wanted to maybe shed a little light on those aspects of it. We don't want to shut down industry. We don't want to shut down development. And this area, just to reiterate, is mainly residential, state hospital, and the Warren Commons. And I guess our concern is we would not like a potential threat to the aquifer to appear within a very short distance of our wells, just for the mere fact that we want to protect that water source.
Can I ask
Do
you
you
a
have any
question?
other questions? Yeah.
What's your significant reason for this now? Is there something that's led to this?
Oh, sure. This is a program that's funded by the DEP, and it's being recommended throughout the entire state for other water suppliers, public water suppliers. And it's a study that would have cost $30,000-$40,000 for a water supply to go through to acquire this sort of information. And there's a program out there that provided us with a grant so that we could find out this sort of data virtually free. We really didn't have an idea where our water was coming from to our wells. I mean, obviously we're in the Conewango Valley, and we suspected that, but to know the specifics of exactly where it comes from and how fast it gets to our wells, we had no idea really.
Do you have any idea in the last 5 years the amount of production of any wells in that area?
Oil wells?
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of wells that exist on the very edge of our boundary.
Okay.
Other than that, no, there aren't any.
They're producing wells?
Yes, yes. Now, there may be some old or abandoned wells on maybe the islands, well, that's not even in our zone. Yeah, not that I know of.
Okay. But no contamination that you're aware of?
No. This covers other things, underground storage tanks, gasoline stations, and that kind of thing too. No, we haven't had any problems. We don't want problems.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. We'll move on to the second portion, or the last item on our public hearing, which is the Human Services Block Grant for Mental Health. And we have Mary Kushner, Director of Human Services, with us. Turn it over to Mary.
Thank you. This is our annual plan that goes in. As many of you know, that we're not sure what the state budget's going to hold, but we still have to go through with our process of planning. And this plan incorporates developmental disabilities, which includes anything from intellectual disabilities until now. Also, we're going to be adding the autism population. Not sure how that's going to affect us at this point, how many individuals will come into the program. So that's part of the plan too. Drug and alcohol, as you know, we have a real problem in our state, in our communities, with drugs and alcohol, the opiates. You know, next door we have a lot of our individuals that are currently there with addiction issues. So it addresses that population. Also housing, which we sit on the board for the EOC, and we're fortunate to have EOC that supplies housing from our homeless at the Faith Inn to permanent housing. And you've been, Commissioner Kapperlin and yourself have been in a couple of the homes, and you've seen that they're very nice for our consumers and individuals and families to live in. And we're fortunate to have that, and part of the funding goes to those homes, where we have a continuum of services that serves probably about 75 people, but you know it's always a need that we need more permanent housing, so we will be requesting additional funding for that too. I guess the advantage is we have this great program. The disadvantage is it's full and we need more. So we'll be looking for more through there. Through the Human Services Development Fund, we use some of that money too towards aging. And you and Commissioner Weimer sit on that board. And we look to assist people that are homebound with meals and some home health care aid into. So we're able to have a contract with aging to provide that service. The biggest portion of that, of the plan, is dedicated to our mental health consumers. And the mental health consumers has a variety of groups that are in that. And as you hear about in the governing board meetings, it's including the forensic population, what we can do to keep them out of jail, what we can do to get them out of jail, to prevent them from going to jail, from providing services in the jail. So that's a big part of our population too. Another is our transitional youth. We have youth that are transitioning out of our schools, which Mr. Stewart sits on the board and realizes that those students graduate and they need some place to go, and we're hoping to transition them into employment and housing and helping with supportive housing. So we look at the housing and employment for that population also. We have a population of individuals that are elderly. Mr. Stewart also mentioned that group. We have a growing population that have ongoing issues with mental health, so we're looking at what are some creative ways to keep them out of nursing homes and in the community, whether that be through our community hospital integration plan, and that keeps some of our individuals out of state hospital also, and maybe looking at more of the cottage industry, the Hickory homes and the Rouse home, to perhaps look at that model for some of our folks with providing some additional support in there. We also have our LGBTQI population, which is a population that we see growing not only in our schools, but people who are, maybe more forward. We have more laws to address the individuals that are same-sex marriages, partners, so looking at that population. We do have support groups for those individuals, so we're able to assist there. So this plan incorporates from children, early childhood to adult. Big responsibility for the counties to support in a limited funding way. And as you know, that we look at all the different categoricals that require different county match. We'll be bringing our budget forward in May, and hopefully, the end of May and then in June, we'll talk about it at the governing board meeting and public meeting there. So this is just to put the plan out there, to ask for support from any comments from the community. We've met with our support groups, our advisory boards, to see what services. Again, the big thing, of course, is housing, transportation, and look to what we can do to assist our individuals across the categoricals.
Okay, thank you, Mary.
Try to be brief.
Yeah, you did a good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does the board have any questions for Mary? No. And we're not voting on this today?
In the public, just the sign for the compliance, just that we're submitting the plan, which will go down into your public or your ongoing meeting.
Oh, it's on the next page.
Just a second. Sorry.
We have 2 pages to our agenda today. Okay. All right, thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
We'll wrap up our public hearing section. Thank you very much for everyone who spoke. We appreciate your comments. And we'll move into our regular meeting. There is no old business on the agenda. New business, approval of the May 10th minutes.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
I have amendments. Would you like us to move into the committee of the whole, or do you want those in motion?
Oh, pardon me?
Do you want to move into a committee of the whole, or do you want a motion with the changes? With my recommended changes.
Please make a motion.
All right, I move to, down at, this is the section down at the bottom for EMT. I can just read if you want. And these are minor changes, I apologize, but the last sentence before agreement with Palmetto Posting
Okay.
shouldn't be first responders, it should be emergency medical technicians. Spend 250 to 300 hours being trained. They don't have to do 300 hours of training per year. They have to do 300 hours of training in order to become certified. And I apologize for not seeing this earlier. And then they do have continuing education. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'll second that.
And then I have another one too, if you want.
I'll second that one too.
Where it says under Attorney Shreve's solicitorship, motion was made by Commissioner Eggleston, seconded by Commissioner Kapperlin, to John Shreve as the county solicitor. That I don't think was the motion I made. I think the motion I made was to accept the agreement because he already is the solicitor and I was not trying to change that. So instead I would strike John Shreve as county solicitor and replace with approve Attorney Shreve's new agreement.
Do we have a second?
Yes.
That's it.
All right. All in favor of those changes, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to the fiscal report. Judy?
Okay, our general fund has $942,982.72 in it. Erie Bank general fund account $745,146.59 for a total of $1,688,129.31. Coming out of the general fund account this week would be our payroll of $270,889.37 and our weekly health care bill of $86,623.32, leaving us a projected balance in the general fund of $585,470.03. We did take an additional draw just this week of $500,000 against the tax anticipation note, and I would anticipate by the balance that we'll probably be taking another draw at the start of next week too.
In addition to the $500,000 that was requested
Yes,
yesterday.
because that $500,000 is in there today. It is in the 900.
When will we start seeing revenue?
August, September.
Yeah.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve the fiscal report as presented.
Second.
Any further questions or concerns? All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Judy. Moving on. Approval of ordinance 249, text changes for the new section under Wetland Protection Overlay District. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the ordinance 249 as presented.
Second for discussion.
Yes. I'd like to open it up to discussion.
Who wants to start?
I'll go
Commissioner
first.
Kaplan? No.
I'll go first. I think that having read through it, and I was at the planning, or the planning commission meeting where part of this was discussed, and a lot of what was discussed had nothing to do with drilling. I mean, to some degree, there were a lot of different concerns. My perspective on this has more to do with the municipal government having a say in how they handle their business within their municipality. This isn't something that's been driven by by the county government. It's something that's been driven by the municipality. And frankly, the area that's being zoned off rather restrictively mostly is state property that isn't being drilled. Frankly, it's to me, my perspective on it is if this is something that the municipality, the municipal government wants to handle and wants to have a say in how their properties are being, the water system's being handled, I think that they should have that say. And I don't have any interest in contradicting that, just to for fear that this is going to expand into something else. I mean, I think that the municipal government has been very straight as to what their intention is with this. I haven't seen anything that leads me to believe that they have any, issue with drilling in the county, that they're ready to, have a sit-in at one of our meetings to, protest the whole situation. They have an aquifer that they want to protect. I think that's a reasonable request, however they choose to want to enact that. That's my perspective on it.
Okay. Commissioner Kaplan?
I have a bit of a nuanced perspective, probably not surprised. I've weighed a half dozen pros, a half dozen cons, but I think, like Commissioner Eggleston, I would like to point out that this is not an issue between water quality and oil and gas rights. I don't see this as two warring factions over a right, I suppose. If you look at the proposed changes, there are 21 newly regulated land uses, and once I've gone through all of them, I don't really see a reason, but I just to approve it. The fact is, oil and gas and injection wells are the last two on here, and they would be prohibited from zones 1 and 2. But I don't think that to reduce the argument down to water quality versus oil and gas is fair, because there are all these other things that would be also newly regulated land uses. I spent quite a few hours reviewing this, every little bit of the ordinance text change, and I'm not strongly opposed to it, to the proposal that is. I would contend that we need to continue to encourage oil and gas as an industry as well as protect our water, but I don't think that this ordinance would actually be doing either. And the main reason is because when I look down through this list of newly regulated land uses, they are already regulated, whether by the county zoning ordinance or by a department within the state. So I'm not inclined to approve it. I mean, I could bore you all by going down each and every line item, but the fact is, even the ones that are not going to be regulated by us, or not currently regulated, are also not concerns. So, for instance, I wouldn't expect, for instance, the Warren State Hospital to start drilling on their property, and everything else within Zone 2 is frankly almost completely within the 200 feet setback from an existing structure. So I'm really not concerned about this one way or the other, because I don't think it's going to be limiting the rights or providing any additional protection. Therefore, I'm not inclined to support it, largely because it's not addressing a real harm and I am sympathetic to an argument of preventative risk management. That said, I don't see any gaps here that this new ordinance would actually be fixing. And my general principle is that if it's not going to be fixing a real harm, then I don't see the point in adding a regulatory overlay that would be adding a burden onto potential businesses, or adding responsibility onto the county to regulate something that, from my perspective, the Constitution of Pennsylvania clearly puts within the responsibility of the state. And until, from a subsidiary I'm not sure how to say that exactly, a substitutionary perspective. I don't really understand why we would try to get involved in that unless the state pushes that responsibility down to us. I recognize that the DEP made that recommendation, but fundamentally I think that it's their responsibility to regulate water and oil and gas, as well as all these other hazardous substances that could be brought into play should we enact this. By the way, I did want to apologize to the staff for, I'm not putting you down by any means. I think that you all do very good work, and I think that this is well written. I think it's well researched, and I think you did a great job. Just from a principled perspective, I'm opposing it. It has nothing to do with kind of the substance of it in terms of specifics that you would have drawn up. So thank you for your hard work. And I do think it was a valuable thing to discuss and explore. So I don't mean to demean you in that way.
All right, I would like to add that Commissioner Eggleston brought up the fact that he would like to see the municipalities have more control over their own municipality. However, the onus is on the county in regulating this. Therefore, the expense is on the county. And I think that there's been some good arguments today brought to the forefront in regard to whether or not the county should assume this liability. And I think that it could potentially become a huge burden to the county. We don't actually have trained staff currently to regulate this. While we do have a North Warren field office of DEP right here in our own community that regulates the oil and gas industry, and we have overburdensome regulations, in my opinion, coming down from the state. And this is just another layer of regulation that I don't think we need. If it were up to the municipalities themselves to regulate this, I might agree with that. It's not that we all don't want clean drinking water and that we don't want to protect the aquifer. We certainly do. But as statements were made today, the oil industry is over 150 years old. We have more regulations in place than we've ever had before. I asked a question if there were any concerns in regard to contamination, and I didn't hear any. And I didn't hear any answers to my question in regard to, what producing wells there are, if they're affecting your water for. I didn't hear any. Yes, that's in fact true. So I guess I'm really opposed, to this regulation as well. And I too thank the planning and zoning staff for all that you did to put this together and working in coordination with Conowanga Township supervisors and the municipal authority. I understand that this was grant funded, and now you have a lot of information at your fingertips, and we appreciate that as well. So we have a motion. I'll call the question. All in favor of changing the text to section 313 of ordinance 249, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Motion failed, 1-2. We will move on to approval of ordinance 250 for the rezoning request R1 to R2 on Pleasant Drive. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Proclamation for Memorial Day. Whereas May 29th, 2017 is Memorial Day, a day set aside to remember those who have given their lives to keep the torch of freedom burning brightly for more than 2 centuries to serve as a beacon of hope for people here at home and around the world. And we still believe today that the blessings of liberty require constant vigilance and sacrifice, and every man, woman, and child in this great nation owes a debt of gratitude to those who served their country so selflessly in events that reshaped the world, and that these brave soldiers, sailors, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, and airmen were the beloved sons and daughters of our land. And countless Americans have made the supreme sacrifice laying down their lives so others could be free. Now therefore, be it resolved that May 29th is set aside in Warren County for the purpose of remembering our fallen comrades and to celebrate contributions and sacrifices of these men and women who placed their lives in harm's way, protecting freedom and fighting to preserve democracy. And be it further resolved, the observance of Memorial Day, May 29th, 2017, appropriately commemorates historical events and expresses gratitude to those who gave so much for their fellow citizens. Do I have a motion to adopt this proclamation?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion or comments? All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. We have a notice to award Willow Street Water Line Replacement Project. We have Lori Dunlop here with us. Lori, would you care to say anything in regard to this?
So first of all, I thank the Commissioners and Pam for putting this through in a hurry. It's more faster than usual, so the contractor's ready to get started. The amount is $102,725 to replace the water line on Willow Street in Sheffield. I believe the current line is clay,
Okay.
breaking up, so they're going to replace it with PVC pipe.
Thank you very much.
A few times in the water.
Okay, so
I move to accept the Kling & Smith Enterprises bid.
I will second that.
all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Reappointments to the Transit Authority Board of Directors. We've been asked by Wendy Winkles, the Director of the Transit Authority, to reappoint Mr. Jamie Steffen of Sheffield, Mr. Gene Conklin of Clarendon, and Mr. David Riegel of Warren to a 5-year term. Do I have a motion to appoint these individuals?
I'd like to ask that that I be appointed to the TALK board in place of David Riegel. That it'd be Jamie Steffen, Gene Conklin, and myself. I ask that because I think it's important to have a commissioner on this board. It surprised me that there's not a commissioner on this board. In order to, there's a lot of different money that's involved in the TALK. They have a very big impact on the community in a variety of ways, whether it's senior services, just general transportation, economic development, everything. And I think it's really important for a commissioner to be involved in the TALK board. So I would gladly volunteer to be on that board in place of Dave Riegel.
Is there anything within their bylaws that disallows that?
No, in fact, in the request, Wendy states if one of the county commissioners would prefer to be on the board, one of the three would not be reappointed. So the executive director has made it clear that it's possible for a commissioner to be appointed to this board.
Okay. Then I move to appoint Jeffy Steffen, Gene Conklin, and Jeff Eggleston in his official capacity to the board of the Transit Authority.
I'll second that motion.
I'd like to just clarify that that's Jamie Steffen.
Is that what I said? Oh, sorry.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
I'd like to just comment that I appreciate David Riegel's willingness, and certainly we have nothing against him, and would be happy to appoint him to the board in the future.
Absolutely. I think that Dave Riegel was a reappointment and has served very honorably in that position.
Well, past this we voted, but I did want to comment that Wendy Winkles did mention to me that Mr. Riegel was willing to step aside if one of the commissioners was willing to accept a position on the board. So, all right. Okay, moving on. New business: approval of Insight Technology Agreement. This is the agreement with Insight Technology for the county's IT services. I've had an opportunity to review the standing agreement and this new revised agreement. I didn't notice anything specific that changed except for the amount of compensation which we agreed on during budget. So I'd like to have a motion to accept this technology management agreement.
I'll make a motion to accept the IT agreement with Insight Technology.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'd just like to say that I'd just like to thank Bill Gallagher and his team for the work that they've done for the county. I'm always impressed with their ability to find savings, to save money on IT, whether it be agreements, technology. They're currently working on a project to revamp the phone system, which is, decades old, and they've done a really good job of keeping, developing and expanding our IT in the county. So I'd just like to say that.
All right, any further comments? All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Approval of the LexisNexis agreement for tax claim. This is for the tax claim department to research property owners in an effort to secure delinquent payment on taxes. And Mr. Gilbert, would you like to say anything?
Yes. So we had a discussion at the work session about contacting the Sheriff's Office about using their program to see if tax claims at the added another user, the clear system they use. I reached out to Marcy. She is getting with the sheriff to see if that's possible. I'm not sure how long that will take. It'll be some time. So right now we have nothing that we can use. I did reach out to Mr. Hedge here with LexisNexis and asked if we could just cancel the contract at any time. He said we certainly can.
Okay.
So we can sign on, start using LexisNexis. Because it will take some time to get that approved and get that in use in our office as well. So I really hate to not have anything in place right now. To have nothing to
Right.
research. Right now, Google and white pages, not really reliable.
And the current software you're using, this software would increase by maybe $170 a year, is that correct?
Spokio was $430 a year. LexisNexis would be $600 a year. And the work session, I guess I misspoke. We discussed if it was $600 and then it would be billed for that year. So if we only use $40 one month, it would kind of roll over and such. That's not the case.
Okay.
So we would be billed $50 a month and could potentially go over. So it's potential to be between $600 to maybe $800 is the worst case scenario
Okay.
a year. But the flip side of that is we won't be doing as many mailings because we'll have better addresses. And each mailing is about $20, so it's potential savings.
Okay. And what are we currently paying Spokio?
It's $430 a year.
Right. Thank you, Phil.
I'll move to approve the LexisNexis agreement.
I'll second that.
Obviously, if you find out soon enough,
Yeah, there's, when I spoke to Mr. Hedge, he said that the system that they're using over at the Sheriff's Office, the Clear system, they want to set up something to speak about LexisNexis because that might blow away when we use over there. So, yeah, obviously, but the discussion we had might be beneficial for at least talk to them.
yeah, we did evaluate the pricing of this when the sheriff brought his proposal forward, and I don't think it was close,
Okay.
but I'd be happy to look at it again.
Thank you, Phil. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Human Services, approval of the Human Services Block Grant. We heard Mary speak to this at our public hearing portion of the meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Human Services Block Grant for the mental health.
Second.
Further discussion?
I'd just like to thank Mary and everybody at DHS for their work on this and their continued efforts in order to, address the various mental health and substance abuse issues that we have within the county. It's a daunting task, and so every year when this stuff has to get put together with dwindling resources, it's constantly a challenge. So thank you for your efforts.
Mary, I do have a question. In regard to block grant funding from the state, in the past, Human Services has been reluctant to follow through with block grants. Do you feel this is more beneficial than the other previously approved block grants that the other counties may use?
Yeah, the concern is that if we go into an official, like to do like the block grant, is that they increase the county match. So like our community hospital immigration program, right now there's no county match to that. If you go into the block grant, it's overall 10%. So that would increase county match, which is always something that we look at with you as commissioners with dwindling tax bases, that, you know, we don't want to add a burden to the county. Another program is like the adoption program. There's something there. There's something in the Fairweather model, which is consumers living in housing that we currently have, where they have their own business. We're able to give them a startup to purchase a house, start a business, and when they're on their own, to help support that. So there's no county match at this point to those. So that's been the reluctance, and just the concern with how legislation and the governor's looking at with the joining of the agencies. We're not sure how that's going to play out. There's just a lot of unknowns. So if we stick to what we know the regulation, and the reporting sources still go back up to those categoricals.
Okay.
So the reporting, they haven't come out with, if they were to come out with truly a non-categorical reporting system, we may look at that because it would be cleaner, and then we would see, instead of having to still split that money out and make sure it's spent in those categoricals. So until the state works out the financials on it.
But this, on the other hand, does not restrict you?
It still restricts us. We still have to follow the categoricals. And, you know, I think that Mr. Bauer, when he was commissioner, they started this process, and we looked at it back at that point, and it was just like they're still not sure how it's going to operate, but now with the combining of the agency, it could even be more confusing. As we heard with aging, you know,
right.
Are they going to lose that money that's dedicated right now to those categoricals? And our concern currently, you know, we support aging in their fight to keep that money strictly for our aging population, because we see a growing population with dwindling funding, and we can't. You know, we want to keep our folks in our community and in their homes.
Okay, thank you for answering my questions. All right, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Next item, Children and Youth, approval of the 2017-2018 Children and Youth Contracted Providers. We have a list of several providers. Mary, would you like to comment on this, or just read the names?
As you know, we sign a lot of contracts, starting with the for the public, is that the contracts are anywhere from our county solicitor to our guardian ad litem to our placement facilities, which we have, as you know, from our juvenile delinquency to our dependency kids. This is all about having that contract in place. And if you want, we have just kind of like an overview. They have for our kids with the drug and alcohol issue, for our fire setters, our sexual offenders, our truancy kids. That seems to be. I keep on pointing over here to Mr. Stewart, who sits on the board. I guess there's no way that it's probably we don't interact with the school district on our children and youth end. So, and we look at these placements, and if I can defer just a moment, with the school district, we work very closely with them. And we work with Dr. Holly in that with our kids that are going into placement to make sure that they're in the correct placement and the correct educational placement. She did a lot of work on some of our kids were going into placement, then all of a sudden they would be also reassessed to be special needs and special education, which increases the cost of the school district. These kids did not go in under that, so Dr. Holly really advocated to keep our kids in the correct place, educational placement, so when they came out and back into our schools, they would still be in that correct educational placement instead of putting them in an inappropriate one. Okay. So some of those are on here too. We also have a psychologist on here that does our parenting assessments, Dr. Ron Court. The court often orders that we give parenting assessments or seeing if the children, what the bonding is between the child before we would terminate rights. Family Services provides services whether it be through our aggression replacement therapy, also our computer systems on here, Avanco, which the state tells us we have to have, but they give us money in our plan to pay for it, but we still have to have that contract. And I think that kind of covers all the different categoricals. And we do it at a public meeting, so when we complete the contracts, we have to negotiate rates. So when we get those, we're not bringing each one to a public meeting, but you approve the list with the contracted amount. And just the state has to approve that rate too, so it's not just a negotiated rate between us and the provider.
Okay, thank you for that. So I guess I'm looking for a motion to approve the contractors list as provided.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2017-2018 children and youth contracted providers that have been offered to us today.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Mary, are there any new providers on this list, or have you worked with all of them?
These are all ones that we had previously. We don't often have new providers that come in, unfortunately, with the way the businesses, they usually close out before they expand services. Right now, our current need we look for is residential treatment through mental health. As we've discussed before, finding a bed for a kid with mental health issues is very difficult. Sometimes they get sent, as far as State College or Philadelphia, so that would be something, that would be the state would have to look for those beds.
All right. Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, I'll open it up to any citizens' concerns or questions.
We can vote on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. That was the approval of the contracted list. Citizens' comments and concerns. Any? All right. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
I'll second that.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for attending.